Hi everyone! Hey, how goes it? Welcome back to my channel. I am Sean and today I am doing a review of The Firm by John Grisham. So this is a book off the top 1000 list by James Mustich, 1000 Books to Read Before You Die. And I've of course known of John Grisham forever. I know he's like this author of courtroom or legal books. But I have never read him. In part, a large part is because I'm just not really a fan of like legal books, courtroom dramas. It's just not really my thing. I don't really like it. But this book is on the top 1000 list, so I had to read it. If you notice down here, I have a book, The Client by John Grisham, and this one is signed. Of course, I just had to show that off because I love all my signed books. Okay, so some backstory on this book. This book was, I think, the second book Grisham wrote. The first was A Time to Kill, I think is the title. So what happened was he wrote that book and it didn't get much attention at all. He wrote this book, and while he was sending it around to different publishers trying to get it published, someone like stole a copy of it and sold it to Paramount Pictures. So what happened was the publishers basically realized, oh, they're going to make a movie based on this book. So a publisher took it on then. He accepted John Grisham's book, and so he got published. And because of the movie, John Grisham was really launched into success. So this book and the movie, featuring Tom Cruise and I think Gene Hackman, really made John Grisham a star. Okay, so my impression of John Grisham before I read the book was that John Grisham was like a really technical writer of like courtroom dramas. So just like real intense courtroom scenes and just real intricate legal battles. That is, however, not what I found out the book was. The book is really like comes off as almost like a low-budget action flick. It's really quite far-fetched, and I could see why people thought it would make a good movie, and I have not seen the movie, so I cannot comment on it. So first off, the writing I thought was pretty good. It definitely sounded like the work of a young writer. I didn't even quite know this was his second book at the time. But in spite of that, I thought there was still some talent there. So I was kind of like, okay, I could see that, you know, John Grisham's a pretty good writer, but at this point in his career, he was still probably figuring things out. It definitely wasn't a great book. Like, I knew it probably wouldn't be a 4 or 5 star unless like the plot all of a sudden just knocked my socks off, which it did not. The plot is the main problem with this book, and the way it's executed, the conflict, the tension. It's just not good. I don't know whether to classify this as light spoilers or not. It really depends on your sense of what a spoiler is. So I'll just kind of say what you might get from like the back of the book or the summary. If you don't want to know that, skip this. The book is basically about this young lawyer who is fresh out of law school. He is interviewing for a job with this firm, and they seem like almost too good to be true. Like they'll get him a car, a house, they'll really take care of him. But they also seem to be very controlling, very particular. And you know, like, okay, what's the catch here? And the catch comes pretty quickly. And now I'm definitely going to bump this up to a light spoiler. So, light spoilers. No, you know what? I'm actually going to say moderate spoilers here. So, moderate spoilers, look out. So you find out early on that this firm works as lawyers for the mob in Chicago. And basically the problem with this is Grisham just, I think, tells you too much. So, for instance, really early on, you find out how the firm is wiretapping all their people. And so they talk in conversation amongst themselves about how there are a couple lawyers in the firm who are talking to the FBI. So they arrange for accidents to happen for the 2 lawyers to be killed. And so they're killed. When that happened, I actually laughed out loud. And that was definitely not Grisham's intended effect. You know, it should have been like, oh no, this is a bad firm. But I actually laughed because it was just so bad. Why? It's hard to say, but it may just be a personal thing. but it's just like so predictable, so over the top. Like this firm is just so bad, they wiretap everyone and kill them. And why would they really do that? If they've been in business for 40 years, like, wouldn't they have a better way to organize? Like, I think they'd be better run. Instead, they run the company as if they're like low budget Bond villains. It's made worse because Grisham tells you everything that's going on. So there's really no suspense. There's no mystery. So at the start, he kind of leaves you clues that this is a shady company. For instance, right off the bat, he says that this company like never hires women. So right away, you're like, ugh, I don't like this company. And it's just really obvious that there's something else going on here. But he tells you right away, early on, that they're wiretapping everyone. They kill lawyers who are talking to the FBI. They're under investigation. They're just a real bad company. And they let you know, like, the lawyer's hotel room is bugged, so like the firm, the people running it, like listen to him and his wife having sex, and one of the guys running the firm is like real creepy, and he just wants pictures of the couple having sex. He really wants pictures just because he's a perv. The problem with this is what is really left for the readers to decide. When you basically spoil the mystery of what the firm is, lawyers for the mob, when you spoil what they're doing, wiretapping everyone and listening to everything he says, what is really left for readers? It's just, he answers too much. He leaves too much for readers to figure out on their own. He just gives it to readers. So I think that is especially why the book sounds like the work of a young writer. I think a more polished writer would be able to spin a story that leaves more mystery to readers. It actually has more conflict, more suspense, rather than just giving everything to readers. For instance, another part that made me laugh out loud was the lawyer, the protagonist, meets one of the people who works for the firm, and right away he says, like, the person's eyes are the most evil eyes he's ever seen, and the most ominous face he's ever seen. And of course the guy is like the hitman for the firm. But that's the way he just described, just the most evil presence he's ever seen. It's just so, it just gives it to you, and it doesn't leave anything for suspense, like, oh, this guy's a bad guy. We all know this is a bad guy, but he's not going to know for 200 pages. It's just frustrating. And what I also don't like about that, when authors just let readers in on the secret before the characters know, the protagonist comes off as stupid, because when the readers know on page 20 what's going on, and this lawyer, the protagonist, who's a really smart guy, he doesn't really figure it out till like, 150 pages in or so. So it's just like, come on, can you not see all the warning signs? It's so obvious because we know what's going on, but the clues are all so obvious to us, and the protagonist just doesn't quite get it. For example, there's a scene fairly early on where he is sent on a trip to the Cayman Islands, I think. And there is this really young girl, I think she may actually be underage, I'm not sure, who basically takes her clothes off and is like, hey, come swimming with me. And remember, the guy is married. So the lawyer, the protagonist, is like, well, okay, no one will know. And so he gets in the water with her. Of course, you know right away that the mob, the firm people, the mob, is watching. They're going to take pictures of it to blackmail the guy, to hold information against him, to say, hey, we got these pictures of you with this girl. If you don't do what we say, we're going to show them to your wife. You can see that a mile away, but the character doesn't get it. And it's just stupid, and that's why the character just comes off as stupid. Because also at that point, he knows this firm is definitely something's up with them. But someone's even actually told him that they're always watching you. They're always listening. But he still does this. He just... So it's just stupid. It's really far-fetched and really sounds like the work of a young writer. And so that's a problem with the book. And ultimately, because of this, because of all these problems, I just really couldn't get into the book. Either I knew everything that was going on because Grisham just out and told you what's going on, or it's just so obvious, like the guy with the most evil eyes and the most evil presence and the worst evil countenance on his face he's ever seen. Well, obviously, you know that's a bad guy. It's just stupid. It's just not intense at all. I know where everything's going. I see everything Grisham's doing, or he just outright tells you. So what's the point in really reading 200-300 pages more of this when you already know the end? You know where it's all going. So I think a more experienced writer would be able to have more mystery, more depth, more gray characters. For instance, instead of just making this firm the supreme evil force in the world, they're just total bad guys, why not have something that makes it more intriguing? For instance, just like off the top of my head, what if like the protagonist knew this firm were lawyers for the mob, and so one of his clients, the guys he would have to work with, would be like the son of the mob boss, and so the lawyer could meet this mob boss's son and maybe like him. Maybe they're about the same age, so maybe he thinks of him like his brother. His brother, by the way, is in prison. So that would be the perfect connection. His brother is in prison. He sees this other guy, the mob boss's son, is like, he doesn't want him to wind up in prison like his brother. He wants to take care of the guy. He wants him to not get in trouble. He wants to protect him. So he serves as the lawyer for the firm, for the mob, because he cares about this mob boss's son. He thinks of him like a brother, and he wants to protect him. So readers will wonder, is he going to help turn that guy away from this life of crime? Is he going to sink into crime, the mob boss's son? Is he going to get in trouble? Is the protagonist like going to talk to the FBI? And is the son going to get in trouble? Like, will he have to choose between being loyal to the mob boss's son, like being his friend, or will he work with the feds and get all these guys arrested? That would give suspense for readers. It would make the book intriguing. It would give some gray characters to the book, rather than this, where he just gives you everything and it's all real black or white, good or evil. It's just bad. I was really torn about what to rate this book. It's definitely not bad enough that it would deserve a 1-star rating, because the writing is pretty decent. In short, in essence, if it wasn't for the plot of this book, like if John Grisham just completely threw away like all of what he tries to do for action of the book, for the conflict, if he just had this story about this young lawyer fresh out of law school and he joins this firm and whatever, you could just give him a real random case, I think the book would actually be pretty enjoyable. His writing, John Grisham's writing, it's pretty good. Like, I really like the pacing. I like his writing style. It's all just pretty good. It's enjoyable to read. It's easy to read. I like the pace of the chapters, the length of the chapters. All of that is pretty good. The problem is with the conflict, the way he tries to execute this story. That is the bad part. So I was really tempted to give this book 3 stars, kind of 2 stars for effort, and then a 3rd star for like potential. Like, hey, you know, I can kind of see you're a decent writer, you're a young writer, so hopefully you'll get better and you'll develop. And so yeah, 3 stars, here you go. What's more, for a time, I wish I could have actually talked with John Grisham about this book, because I want to ask him, like, hey, John, you know this book is pretty bad, right? You know you did things in this book that you regret. Like, yeah, I know, I was a young writer, I was making mistakes, I was trying to get published, I was trying to insert action into the books. I didn't really trust my writing enough to do that, so I tried to have this far-fetched plot. So, you know, I realize, you know, this is kind of a bad book. I realize that. I would understand that. I would relate with that. Most writers, our first books are pretty poor. If that was the case, if John Grisham did that, you know, just said, you know, I kind of know it's not really a good book, I would probably give the book 4 stars and I'd be willing to try another one by him. But I read some of the summaries of his other books, especially his later books, and the plots all kind of sound similar to this. I thought John Grisham was like this real intense courtroom drama writer. Instead, he seems to write plots like this, and that is not a good thing. So I'm just really not so much interested in the rest of his books. But anyway, the rating. I'm sorry I've been skirting around it so long. Originally, I was kind of leaning toward 3 stars, but the thing is, John Grisham, he's already made it. He's already real famous. He's already published a ton of books. He's got money for sure. He's got fame, he's got attention, whatever, his name is out there, so a poor rating is not going to hurt him. So I think the book really just deserves 2 stars. The writing is okay. Grisham's a decent writer, but as a storyteller, as a plotter, I'm just not impressed with him. So I can only give him 2 stars. Something that I suspect may have happened is that when this book became real famous, it got made into the movie and it launched him into success. Instead of developing his talent, as I think he should have, I think Grisham may have thought, oh, so I wrote this book and people loved it and it made me famous. So I'm going to write more books like this. And that is the exact opposite of what he should have done, because this is a pretty, I was going to swear, this is a pretty bad book. So the plot wise, I mean, it's a bad book that way. So I think he should have kept developing his style. This should not be his style. But because it was such a success, I think he thought, oh, this is what's going to make me famous. People want books like this, so I'm going to keep publishing like this. I'm going to keep writing like this. And I kind of think that's a mistake. And that kind of turns me off to the rest of his books, because I wish he would develop. If he did, I would want to read more. But if he basically just writes carbon copies of books like this, the same kind of plots, I'm just not really interested, because I don't think it's very good. I don't think the plot's very good. He may have gotten better over the years, so maybe he's not as far-fetched, just having a character who's described as the most evil eyes he's ever seen. Maybe he's gotten better at that, but still, it's not really a plot that I would want to read. So I think he slips down my to-read list. He was already pretty low on my to-read list, because I'm not a fan of courtroom dramas. But after this book, I'm not really so much interested in more of his books. I might give The Client a read at some point, but if it's the same thing, if it's just far-fetched and I'm not enjoying it, I probably won't last too long on it. But since I have the copy of it, and it's signed, and I know this is an early book from him, I will probably try reading this book at some point, The Client, but it definitely slides down my to-read list. I think that is about it. So, have you guys read this book? Have you seen the movie? Have you read any other John Grisham books? Is there a book you would recommend, like, that you think is John Grisham at his best? Because if this book, you know, like I say, if it's the work of a young writer, so is there a book you know of where it's like John Grisham is at the top of his game in this book? If so, I would be curious to give that book a try. So if you guys know that, let me know. So that is it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.